Welcome to the Inside Outside podcast. I'm Jessica Mernan, author, horticultural therapy practitioner, and founder of Basker, where I help people use gardening and nature for mental, emotional, physical, and social well-being. As much as I need to be in the garden, I also need to watch TV, read books, go down Reddit rabbit holes. So I merge my two loves, the outside and the inside, together each week with my guest. Before we get to today's guest, as always, I share a reason why I like to grow, and in no particular order. Reason number 6 of why I like to grow things. It saves me so much money on plants and flowers. If I were to go to a nursery and pay for all the things in my garden, couldn't do that. I'm spending like $1,000 each season, but I can buy a pack of seeds for anywhere between $2 and $5, or trade seeds with a friend for free. And if it's a cut and come again flower, I might be able to get 100 flowers out of a pack of seeds. I mean, obviously, time to nurture it and things like that, but that's the fun part. And then after they've grown, I can go outside and cut a bouquet for gifts, which also saves me money. So, reason number 6 of why I like to grow, it saves me so much money on plants and flowers. All right, today's guest, Karen Azoulay. She is so smart. I love her book so much. We'll be talking about that. She is a Canadian-born, Brooklyn-based artist and author. Her projects have been featured in New York Times, New Yorker, Hyperallergic, and Vogue. Her book, Flowers and Their Meanings, The Secret Language and History of Over 600 Blooms, was selected by Barnes & Noble as one of the best books of 2023. One of the huge reasons why I wanted to have Karen on, besides that she's awesome, she truly knows so much about flowers, but she doesn't have the space to have a garden herself. So she explores her love of flowers and plants in different ways, which she shares about in this episode. I'm very excited about this one. Before we get to it, let's take a quick break from this week's sponsor, Week of the Website, who, by the way, I've already heard a listener has booked a time with them for a project already, which I'm super pleased for everyone involved. All right, I'll talk to you on the other side. When you run a business, you feel like you have to be good at everything and then also have all the time to do it. Like building a website, you could probably figure it out, but the time it's going to take to figure it out, you should probably just call an expert. And the expert at building websites is Week of the Website. And yes, their name is exactly what they'll give you, a website in a week. Their team is obsessed with the details and giving you a hands-on, compassionate experience that's free of frustration. And when I say they're the experts, they are. They're a female-founded team that's been doing this for over a decade. And Kelsey, the founder of Week of the Website, is the author of the #1 Squarespace book, Squarespace from Sign Up to Launch. If you're starting a business or need to refresh your existing site, their service, Week of the Website Launch, is a great place to start. They'll act as a true partner whose goal is to make you look good. They'll give you a custom Squarespace website in a week that includes a dedicated project manager and designer, 3 design review calls, SEO and mobile optimization, and a lifetime training portal access, and more. Head to weekofthewebsite.com/insideoutside to book a time and learn more. And for Inside Outside listeners, get 1 free month of their concierge support and hosting when you book a project with them. That's weekofthewebsite.com/insideoutside, and I'll make sure to include this link in the show notes. Karen, welcome. My flower expert friend. Do you consider yourself a flower expert?
Oh, well, I have a very specific niche area of expertise. And it's interesting because I will meet all sorts of experts in gardening or herbalism or certain things that I don't know anything about. But I certainly have dedicated a lot of time to researching about symbolism and different kinds of historical stories about how people use flowers and in how we relate to each other.
Mm-hmm. You wrote one of my most favorite books on flowers, so we will get to that. But I start every single podcast. This podcast, we cover an inside thing and an outside thing. And although it's called inside and outside, we start with our outside. Mm-hmm. So Karen, tell me your very first nature memory or a time that nature impacted you.
I was thinking about it, and I grew up in a suburban situation, suburbs of Toronto, and I wasn't a child that was in beautiful wilderness very often. And one of the things I really can think of when I'm thinking of early memories is lawns covered in dandelions. And it being an area where it was just, mowed lawns that had pesticides. And then occasionally you would see a spot where someone wasn't doing that. And then it was covered with these beautiful yellow flowers. And I remember thinking, why isn't everybody doing that? And I'm sure people who are gardeners have all sorts of different ideas about it. But I also loving the way we use flowers to communicate. I love how dandelions are connected to the superstitious game where you blow on the seed head and make a wish.
Yeah.
I love that so much. And that's something that you learn as a child and really stayed with me.
Mm-hmm.
And in terms of the kinds of things I'm interested in symbolism, the dandelion is considered to be a representative of the sun when it's in its globe yellow state, the moon when it's this silvery white puff ball, and then the stars when we blow the seeds away. And from these traditions, Victorian language of flowers, where a symbol was connected to each flower, has dandelions representing rustic oracle. And I just love that as a poetic phrase to connect with a flower.
Yes. And I mean, it's always so fascinating to me how, we look at the flowers that are supposed to be the beauties, right? It's like peonies, cosmos, zinnias. And who decided that dandelions were weedy, bad flowers? Because they can be so beautiful, and we're taught to think of them as bad. But I think what you were saying is interesting, because I think as children we look at them with such wonder, and I think that when I see, the puff, I feel so nostalgic for that puff. As adults, we see them as nuisances.
Yeah, well, I haven't, I live in an apartment in Brooklyn. I'm not tending to a garden trying to control weeds or, but it's somewhat arbitrary how we decide which flowers are valuable. And flowers have gone in and out of trends based on how exclusive and rare and expensive they are. Certain flowers like chrysanthemum and carnation, for example, this is going outside of the realm of wildflowers, but as soon as they become affordable, then they're no longer the most sought after flower. So dandelions were brought to the Americas. It's believed on the Mayflower, and it was brought for, medicinal and used as a salad green. So it arrived with a utilitarian purpose.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Oh my gosh. I love that pretty much any flower I bring up, you can tell me the historical reference for it. And I don't know about you. I always tell people, and I truly, before I started growing from seed and propagating, I also had a view about chrysanthemums, because I really just knew them when you go to Lowe's or you go to the grocery store during the fall season. There's just rows and rows of these short garden chrysanthemums that people will have in a pot, and then they'll throw them away after the fall or however long they last. And it's wild how a garden chrysanthemum, or a florist chrysanthemum as some people call them, it's a whole other thing. They are some of the most beautiful huge, robust flowers you've ever seen. And I think that, I mean, tell me if I'm wrong, but in Asian cultures, they were really seen as these beautiful, poetic flowers. But I think in the US, we really treat them more, unless you're, you know, a gardener or a florist, you really treat them more as this expendable bedding plant that you have for a short period of time.
Well, yeah, it's interesting what you're bringing up of different cultures having different layers of significance to flowers, and chrysanthemum is a really important flower in Eastern floral culture. But I think in Western culture, the chrysanthemum used to be this exotic, expensive, sought after flower.
Mm-hmm.
So this kind of idea, you know, there wasn't always the Home Depot nursery, you know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But yeah, chrysanthemum in Chinese culture is connected to the idea of endurance, long enduring. So if you were presenting a symbolic bouquet or arrangement, if whatever you're pairing it with, if it was a flower that represented health, you know, it would be enduring health or enduring success or something like that. Yeah, pine means life. So together it's like, oh, wishing you a long life.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think just overall, I think when you start to grow cut flowers, they can kind of change your perspective too. You know, I grew up with marigolds in the Midwest. My mom would buy them every summer, and she would buy the short bedding marigolds that, again, you'll find at like a big box store. When you grow cut flowers, you can grow the African marigolds, which can get up to 4 feet tall. They make these huge, beautiful pom-poms, and you can cut them and make beautiful arrangements. And I think that's the thing that sometimes, and this is a discovery for myself, is that the nursery industry really packs in the plants that they're able to put on trucks that aren't too tall, that they're able to sell easily. So a lot of people don't even know that you can grow 4 feet tall marigolds, or that snapdragons don't have to be short and on the ground. I always thought I hated snapdragons until I started growing the cut flower kind, which are tall and kind of go in the wind and get breezy. So I think that sometimes what we see that is available to us at the nurseries, like, they're really designed to make it the easiest and least expensive for them, and not necessarily sometimes the best for the consumer. So it's like a whole new world when you start to grow your own.
Oh yeah, I would imagine. I wish I could come visit your garden and see 4-foot marigolds. It sounds lovely. A little bit I know about all that stuff. One informative book is Flower Confidential, which is sort of like an expose of the floral industry, and pretty interesting.
Wait, one last thing. One of the last times we spoke on the phone, you were telling me how there was a significance to those big poofy marigolds, or there was like a historical story behind them. Do you remember that?
About marigolds or poofy flowers?
Marigolds.
Okay. Well, marigolds, I mean, they're a very culturally significant flower around the world and are used in so many rituals. In India, for example, they come from Central America and Mexico, and their use for Day of the Dead is one of the most potent uses of them. And yeah, the connection of the marigold to death, and the idea with Day of the Dead is sprinkling marigold petals, that the spicy scent can lure the beloved family member that you're trying to evoke in the cemetery and bring them home or bring them to the altar to visit with you, is my understanding. And yeah, it's interesting because the Victorians also had a connection to, with marigolds to death. And when you were mourning, it would be very common to put a wreath on your front door and a black ribbon, and people would know that household was dealing with that.
Mm-hmm.
But if you added marigolds, it was supposed to signify some extreme grief,
Oh, gosh.
maybe something that happened that was really shocking and unexpected. And yeah, and the symbol for marigold, it's sometimes written as despair, sometimes as grief. And sometimes when people are looking through my flower dictionary, a lot of the flowers have really beautiful romantic symbols. Ranunculus is "I'm dazzled by your charms," but a lot of them have heartfelt, sad symbols, or even like sort of catty, sinister symbols. And to me, it's hilarious, the Victorian drama of it, this idea that you could send someone a bouquet to start a petty war or something. All these innocent flowers that we love, like bee balm, signifies your whims are quite unbearable. So you can just imagine.
It is so catty.
Yes. And then so dramatic is viburnum, I die if neglected.
Wow. I know. I'll have to say, reading your book, there were some things like the marigolds signifying grief, and there's a couple, I'm just like, I'm just going to pretend like I didn't see this. I mean, I think it's kind of like the zodiac, right? It's like, I'll take the good stuff that being a Capricorn means, but like leave the rest because I don't want to get it in my head too much because I am superstitious. Didn't you tell me something about Martin Luther King Jr. and marigolds or something?
Oh, the story with Martin Luther King Jr. is not about marigolds, but plumerias.
Oh, plumerias. Okay.
Yeah. And so I'm really interested in collecting stories of how flowers play important or hidden roles in human stories. And in the iconic march from Selma, the final successful march, he and several of his leaders at the front of the march were wearing plumeria floral leis. And there's a whole wonderful story behind that. They were hand delivered by a delegation from Hawaii. The flowers were collected and strung together from the garden of Reverend Akaka, who was also someone advocating for civil rights. And the two of them had met many years prior and had a connection and a bond in their shared values. And these leis were sent as, his support in this mission. And the peaceful message that flowers, this is what I'm so fascinated by, is how flowers can carry these really big emotional messages that we have, whether it's congratulations or love or support or sympathy. Sometimes people find a hard time putting things in words, or they're not there themselves. So yeah, that's, one example of just endless stories of how flowers show up in these really interesting ways.
Wow. Well, you don't know this because this is a new podcast, but every single episode, I bring a study or research or article that I think that is pretty cool in terms of floral or nature and how it impacts us. And so I try to connect it to our guest a little bit. And the study that I'm bringing today is from 2025, actually, and it's called Observing versus Creating Flowers, a review of relevance for art therapy. Oh. And what I thought was and I thought this would be interesting for you because you write books about flowers. And this study showed that when people were looking at images of flowers, like an actual photograph, they felt more joy and happiness than looking at a drawing of a flower. And it said that a lot of it was people, they said, some of them said it was quote unquote boring just to look at the drawing. But they said that many were more focused on the art medium rather than the content of the flower.
Oh, so, right. The technique.
Yeah. So I don't know. I thought this was a really interesting study, A, that someone would do this, and B, that I think I've experienced this myself too. And, you know, I'm obsessed with your Substack, which often shows a lot of floral illustrations of flowers. And when I read this, I thought about myself looking at your book and your newsletter, and I'm like, you know what? When I do see flowers, I am more fascinated with the medium that they use to create it than the flower itself. How do you feel about that?
That's really interesting. I'd love to read that article. As someone who uses visual imagery and art, either on Substack, I'm usually sharing imagery of all sorts, a lot of archival photography. But in my written work, the book and projects I'm working on, I do a lot of collage work where I'm collecting especially botanical illustrations from the 19th century or beyond and turning them into new works. Yeah, I mean, that's new information for me that I'm really interested in about the difference between the illustration and the photography. I'm sure that it could also depend on specific nuances of the photo or illustration. Mm-hmm. I actually, when you said, oh, you don't know this because it's a new podcast, but you have started airing your podcast.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Not everybody listens. I appreciate it.
Well, I really enjoyed it. And the last one, I think you were saying like, oh, take a guess what the thing is. And I was like, oh, I have a guess that I thought it was going to be, there's a study that was showing, you know, we all intuitively know that flowers make people happy and they're mm-hmm. cheerful. And there have been a variety of studies looking at how people react to them. And if I'm remembering the details correctly, I'll have to look it up. I can send it to you if I find it. That there was a study where they had, when people were just riding an elevator and they were comparing afterwards, they were able to measure people's happiness, but they were, you know, thought they were just on a random elevator ride. If there was somebody in there holding flowers, nobody holding flowers, or someone holding flowers and then offered them a flower. Mm-hmm. And then, so of course, people loved it when someone offered them a flower, but they found that even just being in the proximity of somebody holding flowers really elevated people's moods.
Well, I'll also include that in the show notes because that was my other option to share with you.
Wow, that very same one?
That exact same one of the elevator.
I feel like I was like, I guessed it.
You did guess it. But I chose to do this one instead, A, because it was in 2025. So I was like, maybe Karen hasn't seen this one yet. And then also because you do write books and you do share a lot of botanical art. And I mean,
I'm glad to know about it.
And it's wild because I think, I don't know, if I were making a book about flowers, I personally love flower illustrations, but, and I mean, obviously we've both written books and we know that sometimes it's way less expensive to get illustrations than to have mm-hmm. the whole book photographed.
Yeah.
And they even tried just a black and white photo of a flower, and that still elicited more of a happiness reaction than a drawing did.
Wow, that's so cool.
So I will put this in the show notes. And
thank you for sharing this. I mean, this is interesting.
Yeah. So moving on inside,
mm-hmm.
Each week, my guest brings an inside thing that they're obsessed with, and your choices, your category choices are TV, book, or movie, internet gossip you must discuss, a food and beauty trend that you love or must go away, or wild card. What are you bringing to us?
Well, I think this is probably a wild card.
It is. Okay. What are you bringing?
So I wanted to discuss pressed flowers with you.
Okay.
And it's a very broad topic. And I also feel like you will have some interesting things to bring to the conversation, because I know, speaking of marigolds, you mentioned that you're going to be making dye and things like I'm just really interested in all of the types of crafts and things that people do with flowers that then go on and live life.
Yeah.
So specifically with pressed flowers, I feel like there's been all these beautiful things, pressed flowers used in food, in artwork, and there's a long history of herbariums for scientific purpose, but I specifically love the types of herbariums or albums of pressed flowers where it's botanical memento, where people take a little flower or a leaf and press it, put it between pages, and then maybe have a note or a little label from where it is. And yeah, so your whole thing is inside and outside, and my whole area of focus is flowers, but my experience with flowers is such an inside thing because it's looking at books and things like that.
Yeah, and I think I love that you brought up pressed flowers, because I think that pressed flowers and drying flowers, they can really skew kind of crusty, musty, dusty, old-fashioned.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it can be like, ugh. But then I feel like if you press the right, and I want to say right, quote unquote, right to me flowers, and dry certain flowers, I think that they can look really modern and cool. It's just the application of it, right? It's like sometimes I'll go to a farmer's market and I'll see some pressed flowers in like a candle or something, and I'm like, but then I've also seen candles online that are like $300 with some pressed obscure flower in the wax. I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool. So I think it has a lot to do with the presentation of it and the packaging. I mean, it's all context, right? But I've been pressing so many flowers, and it's really been an experiment too, because when you press flowers, some of them change their color into not a cute color. Some of them retain their exact color, almost their exact form, but they're flattened. Others just can't really be pressed because they get a little bit moldy and gunky. Have you pressed flowers at home before yourself?
I have, with various types of results, depending on my method and my purpose. I'm not an expert technician. But yeah, I did a project in 2017, actually, and I was feeling really down. So, it was a dark time and, just things going on in the world. And so I set myself a goal that for a year I would collect flowers. So it was sort of this thing to keep me grounded and looking for the brightness, like throughout the day, looking where I can find the encouraging little spark of a flower. So I would, if it was a walk in the park, this is taking it when it's appropriate.
Yeah.
A little wildflower or weed, or if I got a bouquet when it was my birthday, or there were, weddings or funerals or trips. And I pressed those flowers really just between paper under books and I actually laminated them in this like
Mm.
archival plastic and then turned
Hmm.
it into this sort of like a book bound together, marking a year of my life of interesting moments that I wanted to remember. And I don't necessarily remember all the moments, but I know that the flower was with me at an interesting moment. And I'm interested in picking up that practice again. I was just in France and I was like, oh, this is such a wonderful, joyful thing to be here. And I was on this bike trip and for a day and collected a little geranium, wild geranium from the side of the road. And I had a notebook in my bag and, slipped it in. And so, yeah, maybe I'm going to be picking up that practice again.
Oh my gosh, I love the idea of traveling and keeping a little notebook to put it in, because you know how many times I've traveled and then I picked a flower somewhere. I'm like, oh, I'm going to take this home and dry it. And then it just ends up in the bottom of my bag and it just gets crushed and destroyed.
Oh, yeah.
But I love that idea of the notebook.
Yeah, they're delicate. You have to be careful. And yeah, obviously, flowers that have a higher water content, ones that are larger and meatier, that's an advanced thing to be able to
Yes.
press those. I have not been able to do that very successfully, but there are people who are just like amazing at it. There's one business that I've just seen their work on Instagram, Framed Florals, and they'll have these like big flowers that they've pressed and look so beautiful.
Yeah, my method right now is my son went out for a walk and he found these two kind of like just cheapy white floating shelves that they look just like IKEA shelves. And he found two of them on the ground and he brought them home. And I took them for myself. And now I lay all of the flowers. I put a bunch of just like paper bags that I got from the grocery store and then lay the layer of flowers and then put another grocery bag on top and then put the other shelf on top and then just put every single cookbook I own on top of there. But
yeah.
The result, I mean, I will say, and if you don't have access to this flower, I'm sending them to you. Pressing Gumfrina. Have you seen pressed Gumfrina?
I'm not even sure I know what Gumfrina is.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so Gumfrina is one of my most favorite cut flowers. It's a cut and come again. And there's so many different colors. It's like these little balls of color. And when you press them, they completely flatten. They maintain their color. They just like this. They look like this cool, weird 3-dimensional object in a way. I'm gonna send you some to press. It's just,
Wow.
And Gumfrina is, again, it's one of those flowers you're probably not going to find in a nursery because nurseries, a lot of them just don't sell it.
Right.
But if you can grow it from seed, it gives and gives and gives. And it's also a really good drying flower. And I think when I grow, especially with what I'm doing now and working with clients, I like for at least 60 or 70% of what I grow to have multi-purpose use. So can this dry really well? Can this be pressed really well? Could you dye with this? Could you, I don't know, do something else with it, like cook with it or make a tea with it? So yeah, it's not something I ever thought I would get into because it seems kind of cheesy and dusty sometimes.
Well, I know what you mean, but I think, things cycle through. And
Yes.
like you were saying earlier, sort of the context and the presentation and the style. And there's certainly plenty of types of crafts that use this method that's not my style. But there's so many examples of people doing things that is really beautiful and inspiring to me. And it's just been trending wildly, decorating food and cakes and things like that with flowers. Some Gloria Stern does it where she covers the cakes with pressed flowers and other cookies and things like that, but also people using fresh flowers. But
Yeah, it's being done in a modern way.
Yeah.
And like you said, it's like things trend. I don't know if you're familiar with Sarah Raven. I'm obsessed with her. She's a British gardener. Do you know Sarah Raven?
Not off the top of my head.
Okay. I'll include her in the show links too. But she was talking about not even maybe like 20 years ago or so, not even that long ago, 30 years ago, growing dahlias was not really something people were doing in where she was in Europe very much. And now it's like such a thing, right? Can't imagine that not being a cool flower to grow because they're just so magical. But yeah, chrysanthemums. I mean, I think a lot of things in the right context and the right height can just be so magical.
Oh, yeah. And then when you're talking about different flowers that press really well, there's all these people who have amazing businesses on Etsy and elsewhere where they have gardens like you do, but their focus is pressing them. And it's really interesting seeing the surprising choices of types of flowers that they've been able to press really well. And not having a garden of my own, I have many times purchased them as for supplies to use from those places. I sometimes lead workshops doing pressed flower collages.
Oh, you do? I didn't know that.
Yeah, for the last few years, I've been doing flower and art workshops in senior centers. It's a program.
Oh, okay. Yes. You did tell me about how you're working with senior centers. Yes.
Yeah. Through Brooklyn Arts Council, they have this great program and, it's just so fantastic. I get a budget to buy fresh flowers to bring them every week. And they will make arrangements to take home to their apartments and then bring other art supplies. And every year, one of the activities I do is pressed flower collages. And I feel like, it's just such a fun thing that they can get into. And I feel it's really not intimidating, but it becomes a way to really play with color and composition. And once they start moving them around, then you see the creativity and the experimentation really expand. So
yes,
that's a fun thing. And then the results are just really stunning.
Yeah. And I think too, I think that's if you're not able to have a garden like you, I think pressing flowers also gives you that hope factor. Because I think so much with growing and planting a seed is knowing that, okay, tomorrow I can take a look at it, or in 2 weeks, what's going to happen. And there's a sense of hope and nurturing. And I think that for our brains, especially in these times, it just feels really good to feel hopeful and connected and excited about something in the future. And I know that might sound silly to someone, but I think, like you said, during a time when you were in a really dark place, it sounds like it gave you some hope.
Yeah, and we all need that. We all need to, hard times. We need to connect with things that are positive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and one last question. No, you go.
I was going to say my garden is the Brooklyn Botanical Garden. I'm a few blocks away from it, so I'm there all the time and love to see how it changes from week to week. But you can just really see people just sort of meditating with the trees and the flowers, sort of staring at them, being like, give me some hope, give me some positivity.
And one last question I was going to ask you, it sounded like you had, the dandelion experience when you were younger, and you go to botanical gardens and you don't have a garden yourself. So what do you think it was that set you on this journey? And I know you don't like to be called a flower historian. I like to call you that. What do you think set you on this journey to make it your life's work right now, to study, explore, and to really chronicle the history of flowers?
Well, my background is as a visual artist, and I just was always drawn to any kind of symbolism from different elements of nature. So whether it's flowers and plants or minerals, water, air. And over the years, I would cycle through different eras where I would be focusing on those elements and how they've existed in art history and culture. And flowers was something that I returned to over and over again. And, within art, I think everyone has different connection to things. And there's a long history of people, painting landscapes while living in a city. You're dreaming of this other world. But I always thought that the Victorian language of flowers was so interesting, and I liked the idea of having hidden messages in my artwork. And that's how it all started. I just was making work about that topic, and then one day I decided to curate a group show. I invited a bunch of artists to submit sculptural work that had some kind of floral motif. Some of them used fresh flowers or branches in the works. And the invitation was that I would be providing a dictionary of 19th century floral symbols. So the artists could choose to use that lexicon or not, but know that their work was going to be potentially read through that as a layer of meaning. And I made just like a self-published, stapled flower dictionary with a series of photographs that I made. And so then at the event, I'm telling everyone about the history of floral symbolism in the 19th century. And it's just such an interesting story, and it tips into so many other things that I just loved sharing the history. And I found that people were really interested and wanted to know more. And I just started looking into it more, and I started getting invited to colleges or galleries to give a talk about that project. And each time I would do a little bit more research, refresh my slideshow, find out a little bit more. And I started to see aspects of the history that was not included in any of the language of flower books, and developing my own perspective on the history, because obviously the 19th century was a very complicated time. And it just was percolating in me. And then I was, I have to write a book about this, which is wild because, I had never done anything like that before. But and so then I just had so much fun researching it. And I just love sharing these stories and doing the research. And it's just sort of snowballed.
Okay, this is the last question. But so a lot of people ask me about how to get a book published. And I think what's interesting about your book is, do you think you landed that book deal because of the art show and the presentations you've done? Because you weren't necessarily, have a podcast about it at that time. You didn't have a Substack about it. And I think publishers like to see, they have this huge Instagram about flowers, or they have this course about flowers. What do you think sold that book for you?
Well, I don't know. I did not. I had a flower Instagram at the time, but it really did not have followers. So it was not on anything like that. I really felt passionate about my proposal and put a lot into it. Yeah, I mean, I think that when you have a history of doing different kinds of projects and that kind of commitment, it means something. But I was really coming at it as a beginner. this self-published booklet. It was like 20 pages stapled. It had done really well considering that it was that, and it was never distributed anywhere other than, I think there was like a handful at Printed Matter in New York. There was no distribution, but it did well because people would get it and they would post about it on Instagram, and then their friends would be like, "What's that?" And so there was some measure of proof that people were interested, that, you know.
I love that. And I wanted you to share that, just because I think that there's a lot of people that want to write books or want to share what they're doing, but they've been told by a literary agent, well, you don't have, 50,000, 100,000 followers, so no one's going to want your book. I really think that if you have an amazing proposal and you show that you've been putting in the work and that people will recognize you as an expert in it, I think it's possible to get a book deal without, a million Instagram followers or a podcast or a newsletter or whatever.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I was told that, I prepared a proposal and sent it to a few agents, and I met with one, and at the end of the meeting, they said, okay, get back to me when you have an Instagram and that it has at least 20,000 followers.
Oh, really?
And, yeah. And so, I mean, for me, that would, even if I had what they were looking for, that's not the right person for me to work with. And yeah, it's like when you find people that are excited about what you're doing, and they see what you see in it, then that's, of course, what you hope for.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for being here. If people want to find your work, where can they find you?
Flowers and Their Meanings is available where books are sold. And yeah, I love sharing stories and images on Substack. It's the same name, Flowers and Their Meanings. And I also have Instagram, Flowers Meanings.
I'll include it all in the show notes. In your book, everyone's got to get your book. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. This was really fun.
Thanks for listening. That's the show. We have lots of reviews on Apple Podcasts, but none on Spotify. So do me a favor, and if you like the show, give us a 5-star rating on Spotify. It will help more people find the podcast. And if you want to leave an extra Apple Podcast review, I'm cool with that too. And to find links for everything we talked about, check out the show notes or head to baskergardens.com and click on the podcast link. And if you want to learn more about horticultural therapy or how we can work together, go to baskergardens.com/pod and message me. Again, everything in the show notes. Talk to you next week.